Greetings, Otaku Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you all, yet again, another Comic Book Hollywood video segment right here on Otaku Assemble! Weekly. As always, I'm here to bring you the latest in this week's Comic Book Hollywood movie review. But before I jump into that review, you all know the drill. Pledge to my comic book miniseries totems on Kickstarter.com. Link is annotated on the video above. Click on the annotation, it'll bring you straight to the page. We're almost there, guys, so help me reach my goal. But with that being said, now let's jump into this week's Comic Book Hollywood movie review, and I will be taking a look at Watchmen. But I will not be reviewing the graphic novel. I'll be reviewing the film. Remember, Comic Book Hollywood. Review movies, not the graphic novel. Anywho, but yes, I will be reviewing Zack Snyder's Watchmen. On one note though, before I jump into this review, I am actually surprised I didn't get more votes for this, or maybe I got more votes in the past and didn't know because it wasn't the most voted. But yeah, there were only like 6 or 7 votes for this week, which is kind of weird. Okay, anywho, but let's jump into the review. Now, starting off with a brief summary of what the film's about. Watchmen is a 2009 American superhero mystery film directed by Zack Snyder and starring an ensemble cast who I'll address to when I get to the acting portion of this review. The film is set in an alternate history 1985 at the height of the Cold War between the West and the Soviet Union, as a group of mostly retired vigilantes investigate an apparent conspiracy against them and discover something even more sinister. That's pretty much as broad and as brief of a summary I could possibly give, but I'm just going to go ahead and tackle this review from the perspective, or rather from the assumption that either A, most of you all have read the graphic novel, B, most of you all by now have seen the film, or C, if you haven't, I, at this point in time, will highly recommend that you all check out Captain Logan at Geekvolution, his superhero rewind review of Watchmen. It's a much longer than this review will be, much more in-depth and much more analytical. So feel free to check that video out. I highly recommend it. Now, let's talk about the writing of this film, because when we're talking about the writing, of course, you all know a tradition of Comic Book Hollywood, and pretty much the point of these videos is to compare it to the source material. Now, as I mentioned, this is the graphic novel written by Alan Moore with artwork by Dave Gibbons. One of my favorite graphic novels, one of the books that inspired me to pursue a career in American comic books. Despite what people say about Alan Moore, me personally, I don't give a shit, because he is still one of my idols. Probably, as far in regards to American comic books, he is probably right up there with Neil Gaiman as my main 2 inspirations to pursue a career as being a comic book writer. And so, in regards to the writing of this film, pretty much what I want to talk about is this, because Watchmen is kind of, I have a love-hate relationship with this film, because in some regards, I do appreciate what they attempted to do with adapting this, and I commend them for the attempt, because look how thick this motherfucker is. I mean, this is a big book. And I mean, they only had, what, a running time of, what, let's see, 162 minutes. That's, what, 2 hours and 42 minutes to adapt the whole fucking thing. And they couldn't even do it in the theatrically released version. If you want the closest thing you can get to a full adaptation of the graphic novel, you have to pick up the, what is it? It's the ultimate cut, which is the theatrical version, the director's cut, and Tales of the Black Freighter, which was released as a separate direct-to-video animated film. Did somebody just text me? I'm in the middle of a review. Anywho, so, okay, so when we're talking about the writing of this film, the writing in the film, I gotta talk about what was left out of the film, and what was changed from the source material. Because here's my thing, while I like the movie, in my opinion, Watchmen is a weak adaptation, and this is what I mean. Because as I've said multiple times before, a good adaptation does not mean that you follow the source material to the letter, nor does it mean that you abandon the source material entirely. It means that you find that perfect middle ground in between the full source material and creative liberties. Watchmen, I felt, is on one side of the spectrum where that they follow the source material too faithfully. There are multiple things that are in the graphic novel that are in the film that I felt shouldn't have been in there. Multiple things that I felt should have been in there. And multiple things that I was actually surprised. I will say that I have kind of laid off of Watchmen a tad bit because when I saw the director's cut, a lot of what I wanted to see in the film is in the director's cut, just not the theatrical version. So I do give them, I do give them leeway for that. There are a few more things though that I felt should have been in there, especially the scenes with Vite. A lot of scenes with Vite were cut out of the film, which I felt was detrimental to it because it kind of made the whole unveiling of Vite being the villain kind of obvious. Why? Because he's the character we see the least of in the movie. That's not like that in the graphic novel. You actually spend quite a bit of time with Vite in the graphic novel. Also, the creative liberties that were taken in regards to some of the action scenes, how Zack Snyder decided to gore those up, as you will. I didn't care for that shit. I didn't want it in this fucking film. I felt like it was detrimental to adapting this material because keep in mind the framework of the material, keep in mind the alternate universe, the world in which this takes place, but also keep in mind how these events that happen in the graphic novel pertain to the characters. Where Zack Snyder pissed me off beyond belief was the scene where Rorschach takes a mullet to a guy's head. When he takes a mutton to a guy's head. That is completely outside of Rorschach's character. That completely pisses on Rorschach's whole psychological break that occurs in that defining event. Why would you do that? No, Zach, no. And for any of you all who have read the graphic novel and who have seen the film, you know what event, you know what scene I'm talking about, and you know why I make that complaint, because it actually is valid. It's pretty fucking valid. You don't do that to a character like Rorschach. No, Rorschach has his own ideology, he has his own moral code, and he has his own rules. That's the event that created Rorschach, who he is. And your creative liberties kind of piss on that. Alright, but what did they do well with the writing in the film? The dialogue is good. The dialogue is good. The dialogue for the most part is word for word what it is in the graphic novel, which is what I like, that they kept the majority of that. The dialogue is good. The pacing is actually good too. Despite the fact that I have problems with some of the scenes, the pacing for the most part is actually good. But man, when you're talking about the director's cut and then when you're talking about the ultimate cut, that's a 4-hour film. And yeah, the pacing takes its toll on you after a while. But all in all, in regards to the dialogue, I think the writing is spot on. And I think they did a good job at that. Let's talk about the acting, because there actually were some breakthrough performances in this film. First and foremost, let's start off the list. First, I'm starting it off with Jackie Earle Haley. Phenomenal job as Rorschach. I don't see anybody else ever playing Rorschach, because Jackie Earle Haley owned that role. Next, Jeffrey Dean Morgan as the motherfucking comedian. Holy shit. I had my doubts when I found out he got cast in that role, but man, he owned it. He owned that role. I mean, fantastic. And then of course, Billy Crudup, as Crudup as Dr. Manhattan. despite the fact, and hear me out now, despite the fact that I hate Dr. Manhattan as a character, I do not like Dr. Manhattan whatsoever. I didn't like him in the fucking graphic novel. I don't care for his character in the film, but that does not take away from the fact that Billy Crudup did a fantastic job in portraying the character. Even though I don't like the character, he still did a damn good job portraying that character. So those three performances, I thought hands down stole the show. The cinematography, I especially love the cinematography in the film. I like the fact that despite the initial the initial instinct to go ahead and shoot the majority of the film in green screen like they did with 300, they opted out for more sets, and I like that because I think I think those sets were needed. I think those sets kind of ground the story in the more realistic setting that it has. I mean, with 300, you could get away with the green screen. Why? Because 300 is so stylistic. But with Watchmen, because it takes place in the real world, I think you kind of needed those sets to ground you in reality. So I like the fact that they did that. Another thing I loved with the cinematography is that the majority of the film is panel for panel what it is in the graphic novel. Panel for panel. And I like that. I especially like the fact that Zack Snyder had Dave Gibbons on set throughout the shooting of the film. And what did Zack have in his hand? A copy of the book. He kept referencing the material, and I like that because when you look at the film, it is this is where the movie is a good adaptation. An adaptation. Visually, it's a good adaptation. Visually, it's a flawless adaptation. It is the pages of this book brought on the silver screen, and that's where they got it right. And the music was great. The score I really loved. Once again, this is Tyler Bates returning to do some of the scores for the film. I thought the scores were good, but where I actually adore the film is with the songs that made it into the film. The songs that made it into the film, such as the Smashing Pumpkins. What is it? I got. Hang on a minute. It's Damn, I cannot remember the name of the song because it got that long ass title. But the Smashing Pumpkins song that was used in the trailer. That I like the fact they used that in the trailer. Of course, All Along the Watchtower by my man Jimi Hendrix is in the film. Bob Dylan's The Time Are Changing in the opening sequence, the opening montage. I love that. Damn, why can I not remember the name of that song? What is it? It's like Tomorrow is the End, is the end of tomorrow, some shit like that. Anyway. I like their musical choices, the musical numbers in the film. And so to wrap this video up, because I know this camera's about to die on me and I'm going to be pissed if I lose this video. To wrap this review up, my final thoughts on Watchmen. Like I said, I think it is a weak adaptation. When you compare it to other comic book adaptations, like the first two Spider-Mans, like X2 X-Men United, or X-Men First Class for that matter, when you compare it to, I'm trying to think of another good adaptation, when you compare it to some of the DC animated films that are adapted stories, I think that in comparison to those, Watchmen is a weak adaptation because I think at times, for the most part, it is too faithful to the material. Like I said, the art of adaptation is the ability to take the source material and then to take creative liberties in order to translate that to the new medium that you're adapting it to. Where they did it right, I felt, was visually. They did it right. The writing, I felt there were some mishaps. I felt like some scenes that were left out should have been in. Some scenes that were in should have been left out. The dialogue, I thought they did it good. So all in all, it has its good points, it has its bad points, it has its perks, it has its flaws. All in all would result in me probably giving this film, all in all, I would still give this film 4.25 out of 5 stars. Not quite a I would give it a B plus. Not quite an A minus, but I would give it a B plus. It is still a good film. And for any of you all who actually want to take up the challenge of watching the director's the ultimate cut, Godspeed to you, because that's a 4-hour film, yo. So fucking movie. Anyway, that's going to wrap up this week's Comic Book Hollywood film. In the comments below, leave your suggestions for next week's review and thumb up the one you want to see. Once again, my Smallville season 2 review will be up tomorrow. And don't forget to pledge to my comic book miniseries totems on Kickstarter.com. Link is annotated above. With that being said, this is Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, signing off. And until next time, peace.